Hola, ¿cómo están? Tenemos hoy un programa muy entretenido. Vamos a aprender muchísimo de la cultura palestina con una especialista, antropóloga, arqueóloga, también nacida en Belén y muy cercana a muchísima gente que vive aquí en Chile. Vamos a presentar a Iman Saca. Ella, como les contaba, es antropóloga, estudió en la Universidad de Michigan, tiene un máster y un doctorado en la Universidad de Illinois en Chicago y hoy es la directora del Centro de Estudios del Medio Oriente en la Universidad de San Javier. Bienvenida. Hola,
Thank you so
Iman.
much. Hola, ¿cómo está?
Muy bien. How are you?
Very good. Thank you so much. Happy to be with you.
Great. Fantastic. Um, Before we start, I wanted to let everyone know that behind me we have your mom. Aquí tenemos a la mamá de Iman, que es una persona que se dedica a preservar la cultura, el patrimonio y toda la historia palestina. Y dentro de esos temas está el bordado tradicional palestino y de lo cual vamos a hablar hoy con Iman. Thank you. I was introducing your mom.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for being here with us. We're very happy. It is a great honor to have such an important scholar with us today. And best of all, a woman.
Thank you so much. Wonderful being with you and happy to be on such an important show that you're putting together here. So, very pleased.
Thank you. What we try to do is to bring the culture and everything, all the heritage from the Middle East, from the different countries in the Middle East to Chile and to the Chilean audience and the Latin American audience.
Wonderful.
Mhm.
Wonderful.
Well, Iman, tell us a bit about yourself. You were born in Palestine and you ended up in the United States.
Yes,
Mhm.
I'm talking to you from Chicago. So I was born and raised in Palestine, actually. I
Mhm.
went to school there. Wonderful childhood, even with the difficulties of the political situation. But it was great to be in such a wonderful country and loving environment. I had a wonderful mom and dad. Still, they are still very supportive of me, even at this age. So they help a lot. They support a lot. I have two brothers, and it was a really wonderful time. The reason I ended up in the United States is towards the end of my high school years, the first intifada started. So, because of the first uprising or intifada started in Palestine, it was very difficult to continue my higher education. And education for Palestinians in general is extremely important. And for my family, it was really important. So I finished high school, universities are closed, and my parents were wonderful to suggest. I never thought of leaving, but my parents were insistent on me having an education, me and my brother. So they actually suggested that we go and study in America because my grandfather was living and my grandmother and all my aunts and uncles from my mom's side were living in America. It's a very long story, but
Mhm.
my grandfather, after 1967, was not able to return to Palestine for political reasons. So he went to South America, Central America, and he ended up in North America in the state of Michigan. And that's why I ended up at the University of Michigan, as you said at the beginning of the show.
Mhm.
So that's why I ended up continuing my higher education here in the United States.
Was it difficult to make such a change?
Of course, of course. The two things that have helped is a very strong knowledge of the language.
Mhm.
In Palestine, we learn a lot of languages when you were
Yes.
young at school. So I learned Arabic, English, and French when I was young. So English was a very important language. So the language was not a big barrier.
Mhm.
And we also visited when we were younger. So I came to a little bit of a familiar place. And my family was here, my grandparents, and we stayed with them for the first year, which made life, of course, easier for us. So any transition is difficult, but it was not as difficult as I thought it was going to be, just because we were prepared linguistically, and to have family here was a blessing, definitely.
And there was a community also in the place you lived. Where did
You
you
know,
arrive?
there was no, not at first.
Oh,
Well,
okay.
I didn't know the community. My community
Okay.
was the family,
Right.
so that was the closest community. And with time, I learned that there's community in the city I was in, which is called Ann Arbor. So it was a
Mhm.
really wonderful thing. But then I discovered that 40 minutes away in a city close by was a huge Palestinian community with
Mhm.
restaurants and foods and all the cultural aspects. So whenever we miss food, we would come to the city called Dearborn, where we'll have,
Dearborn.
yes,
Uh-huh.
we will have wonderful desserts and food, and kind of connect to the music. So it was really wonderful. So I had my family as a community, the community in Ann Arbor, Michigan, which was small. But
Mhm.
involved, and Dearborn with wonderful cultural activities and foods.
And
Absolutely.
and were you clear about what you wanted to become, what you wanted to study when
Oh
you
no.
got to the States?
Not at all. Not at all. And actually, I was completely, I mean, I was just finished high school and I didn't know what I want. My family had some influences on me. We're, very cultured family. We love traditions and cultures. As you see my behind you, the poster that my mom made. So
Mhm.
my mom was very involved in the community. My dad was extremely involved. He's an engineer. So he was extremely involved in the community as well as she was. So, but I didn't know what I want to study. And the
Mhm.
nice story, actually, that's why I always tell my students, you don't have to come to the university and know what you want. So I actually was registered in a class called anthropology. And someone registered me, my advisor, and I had no clue what it is. So I took the class, and once I figured out what anthropology is and what archaeology could be, I definitely fell in love. And that became my path, my educational path, and also my career path at the moment. So this was something that just happened to me, and I'm very pleased with the advisor that put me in that class.
You
and
feel
intro-
like you feel like at home when you do
yes,
archaeology,
I
or whenever you see things that relate to the origins, to where you come from, to what you heard when you were a child. It's like homecoming.
Absolutely. And like you said, I mean, being born and raised in Palestine and in Bethlehem specifically, you're surrounded by history and
Mhm.
heritage and archaeology. You can't help it. It's all there. So
Uh-huh.
this is but now I put it in a specific context. It makes sense to me after, in studying anthropology for so long. But
Mhm.
you're absolutely right. It is absolutely amazing that I grew up with this history and heritage, and that I can still stay with it on a professional level.
And most of the people there, they sometimes they take it for granted, young people,
Mhm.
and like when you live there, it's like you don't see things. And when people come from abroad, they are, oh my God, this is so beautiful, and this and that. And people there, they tell you, well, it's like been there all the time.
That's it. That's nothing new for them.
Yes,
Absolutely.
yes.
And when I tell my students, like my school was next door to the Nativity Church where Jesus was born, it's like, for me, that was a daily thing. For them,
Uh-huh.
it's like, wow, that is incredible to be so close on a daily basis. So people there appreciate it, but it becomes part of who they are. You
Mhm.
know, for people from the outside, it's something so amazingly new because they only hear about it. So to visit it for a short period of time, there's a whole level of appreciation. So I think local people understand its value and appreciate it, but it becomes part of who they are and their daily lives.
Right.
Absolutely. So it's a different level of appreciation and understanding.
But I guess the situation and what Palestinians have gone through,
Hmm.
um, maybe life or history has made them praise what they have and reach other levels, just as it happened with the embroidery in the UNESCO, the Palestinian embroidery. I
Yes.
mean, so I guess it's part of being who they are, or resisting, of staying there, sumud, of
So
being, yes.
you know, you're absolutely right. I think because we are so used to archaeological sites and religious sites being there, embroidery being there, the foods being there, I
Mhm,
mean, we live them, we appreciate them, but when they are threatened or taken away from us, we really fight back to say, no, this is our heritage, this is our identity, this
mhm,
is who we are, and we need to make sure that the world knows that these
mhm,
things are part of who we are, not only for us to love and protect, but for the whole world to appreciate. Yes, but
mhm,
also that it's part of the heritage that existed on the land of Palestine. So, all these archaeological sites from any time period, is part of the heritage of Palestine, the land. And we, as Palestinians living there today, are protectors of this heritage. And we need to take good care of it for future generations of Palestinians, but also for the whole world to always enjoy it for long periods of times. So even though we live with it, but when it's endangered or not taken care of, or when it's appropriated, then we really have to step in and protect it as much as we can. And that's what happened not only with the embroidery, which we're going to talk about
mhm.
a lot, but with other sites that were on now are on the UNESCO list as well. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that later
Oh, great, great. Because you
Absolutely.
spent a sabbatical uh,
Yes.
year or half a year,
Half a year.
half a year
Mhm.
in Palestine. Yes,
I did.
great.
I just got back from being there for 6 months. It was an amazing sabbatical. I did something very interesting with oral history, but I usually go to Palestine every year, every summer, and I work mainly in archaeology. So I do archaeological excavations and I work with archaeological sites. This year I did oral history. So it's keeping the stories and the histories alive. And some of the things I'm going to talk to you about that relate to narrating stories and keeping the stories alive for the Palestinians, but also for the world as well.
Great.
Yeah.
So we will have the pleasure of seeing your presentation, and we will be asking you in between. Ujú.
Yes,
Vam-
please.
Vamos con la presentación.
All right. So, oops, sorry. I wanted to present to you a little bit about something that we decided to talk mainly about today, and that is the art of Palestinian embroidery, as you see on this image. So, I just wanted to talk to you about it and show you beautiful examples of the uniqueness of Palestinian embroidery and the stories behind Palestinian embroidery. But I do want to continue with this discussion about UNESCO. I think UNESCO is extremely an important international institution, and being part of UNESCO is important for us Palestinians because it helps, and for other countries as well, because it helps protect the status of a site or an artifact or a tradition, and protect it from theft, from appropriation, and from looting. So Palestine became a member of UNESCO only in 2011. So as an official member of UNESCO only in 2011. So it's really recent.
Mhm.
And once Palestine became a member, they started drafting laws related to both tangible and intangible heritage. Tangible heritage is archaeological sites and objects. Intangibles is traditions, folklore, stories, and embroidery as well. And as you see on the screen, Palestine has been very successful in putting on the World Heritage List important archaeological sites. The first one was the Church of Nativity in Bethlehem. We just
Yes.
mentioned it.
Uh-huh.
And in 2012, Palestine was successful into adding that important site for Christians, not only in Palestine, but all around the world on the UNESCO World Heritage
Mhm.
List. I was involved in putting Batir, the village of Batir near Bethlehem, on the World Heritage List. Batir is a beautiful, with amazing
Yes.
village with beautiful terraces,
Uh-huh.
and that
Very
was in,
similar to the terraces the Incas have
absolutely, yes,
in Peru.
in Peru, in Machu
Yes.
Picchu, and other
Yes.
places.
Uh-huh.
Terracing is the only way to plant on mountains.
Uh-huh.
Yes. So it was a beautiful site. The village is gorgeous. It was threatened, parts of it, by
Yes.
Israeli confiscation.
Hmm.
So putting it on the World Heritage List protected it from land confiscation. So that was a really wonderful file, and I was very proud to be
And you
involved
were
in it.
part of it.
Yes, yes.
Mhm.
The other one that I was not a part of is Hebron. Hebron is
Mhm.
very diverse and beautiful, and it was put in 2017 on the World Heritage List. And I'm happy to announce, this is very important, Jericho.
Uh-huh.
I'm part of the international team of experts that is working on the dossier to submit Jericho on the World Heritage List. For
Which
people
is
that
the
don't
one
know,
of the oldest cities in the world.
absolutely. It's
Uh-huh.
one of the oldest inhabited
Yes.
cities in the world. It's We still have evidence of that, and amazing
Mhm.
stratigraphy. So we got an email yesterday that officially the state of Palestine submitted the dossiers that we've
Okay.
been working on to UNESCO. It's a huge nomination process, but the official submission of the dossiers, two of them, were sent to UNESCO, and that happened yesterday. So a year of working on that culminated yesterday in the official submission, and now we have to
How
go
long
through
does
the
it take?
process.
I mean, you present a site
Yes,
or you present something specifically considered heritage and culture. And
yes.
what is the process? It has
It's
to be
a
taken to committees
Oh
or a
yes.
general assembly or something like that?
It is. It's taken to multiple committees and then
Mhm.
deliberated and discussed in a general assembly meeting that does the final decision. And people have to come from UNESCO to visit the site
Okay,
and look at it and see if what we wrote fits on the ground. There has to also be a protection plan and a management plan for the site.
of course,
So
for
those
the
are
future.
all,
And they
yeah.
do
So
a sort of an audit, and they then assign and they award or certify, right?
yes, they award it. So I like the
Hmm.
term award.
Uh-huh.
So they don't allow it to be placed on the
Uh-huh.
World Heritage Site,
Okay.
but it has to go through multiple approval processes and submission. Palestine had in 2012 to submit a list of sites that it want to be on the World Heritage List, and
Hmm.
if it's not on that list, it's really hard to list it now. But Jericho was part of that list that was sent, maybe I think 17 or 18 sites that were sent
Hmm.
to UNESCO. And these sites that
So
you see
this
on the
was sent
screen,
when Palestine became part of UNESCO.
absolutely.
So because we got cut a little bit with
Yes,
the internet. So Palestine became part of UNESCO in 2011.
yes,
In 2012, it presented the sites they wanted to work with and they
y-
wanted to preserve.
yes,
And from that list, you and all these specialists start working on that and prepare dossiers per site or
correct.
uh, depending or the area or the heritage, specific heritage you want to keep, right?
Correct, correct.
Okay.
So that's definitely the process
Hmm.
that we've gone through. And this happens for tangible sites.
Hmm.
This is what this is under the umbrella of tangible sites. And the embroidery that we're going to be
Hmm.
talking about was added to the intangible UNESCO World Heritage List.
Okay.
and that happened in December, last December,
Hmm.
basically a couple
Yes.
of months ago. But the process of working on it started in 2016, in an official way by different people and also a non-official way. So Palestinians really pushed hard. So if you, as you can tell from the screen, Palestinians have been working on this nomination process for a while, but it happened so quickly towards the end because of something that has happened that we're going to talk
Hmm.
about in just a moment. But I do want you to know that the official nomination and title of embroidery is The Art of Embroidery in Palestine: Practices, Skills, Knowledge, and Rituals.
Hmm.
So that's the official name for this. We're going to call it today in our discussion Palestinian embroidery.
Uh-huh.
But it's not the embroidery itself, but all the stories and the skills
Right. The
behind
sitting
embroidery.
together, the chatting, the life, the stories, and
Correct.
the heritage, and teaching the children all that.
Yes,
It's part of life. It's part of life.
absolutely.
The
And it's
same
the
happens
meaning.
with religion. Many people say, "Oh, but you might be Catholic or Orthodox, or but it's totally different if you're a Catholic and Orthodox in the Middle East, in Palestine, because you live religion in another way. You do many rituals, food, and many things that are part of the culture that are related to religion. So I
Correct.
think it's these are things that add up to
Hmm.
what you call culture in general.
Absolutely. Correct.
Hmm.
Correct. So it's the art of embroidery is like you described, all of these things that come together. And as we're going to see today, there's so much meaning behind the embroidery, so much explanation to why
Hmm.
a certain design, to the colors that are used. Everything has a story and a significance within that culture. So I really wanted to talk about that just to
Hmm.
show that every culture has embroidery, probably,
Hmm.
but I wanted to show you today the uniqueness of Palestinian embroidery and the stories behind Palestinian embroideries
Hmm.
and embroidery designs.
Great.
Yes, absolutely. So I just want to let you also know that my mom informed me that I think 2 days ago or 3 days
Uh-huh.
ago, the Minister of Culture have officially announced December 15th,
Hmm.
which is the day that UNESCO approved this nomination as a day of yearly celebration in Palestine. So every December 15th, they're going to call it Palestinian Embroidery Day and
Uh-huh.
celebrate the embroidery art and heritage in December 15th.
Hmm.
Yes. And the reason this all happened, it seems all of a sudden, but it didn't, as we
Yes.
saw, it had been happening for a long time,
Hmm.
is an event that took place in December. The event of Miss World Universe, the Miss World pageant, the beauty pageant. It
Hmm.
happened in the city of Eilat. Israel hosted the Miss Universe, and one thing that happened that really provoked a lot of Palestinians is that one of the ladies participating in this pageant, who was from Philippines, posted images on her Instagram account saying that we're in Israel, we're in a Bedouin place, and we are celebrating um, uh, uh, this kind of heritage. Come visit Israel. So that was really very painful for Palestinians to see. They were
Hmm.
wearing Palestinian dresses. They were doing the warak dawali,
Hmm.
and the ka'ik that we do for
Yes.
the Easter
Easter.
celebration or for the Eid celebration
Hmm.
for Muslims. So it's for both. So that was a really difficult thing to see. And I think that's what caused a lot of this painful cry that this is Palestinian heritage, and we need to protect and preserve and protect our heritage from appropriation by the state of Israel and calling it their heritage and promoting it as such. So that
This
was
was
a
this was like a response to UNESCO
no, this
or
was before, just
before?
before. Actually, it was
Okay.
the same month.
Yes, I know. That's
It
why I was
was,
asking what came first. I mean,
yeah.
did they present this because of UNESCO or what UNESCO was going
They
to award?
They might have been aware of it.
Hmm.
Remember, the process of putting it on the UNESCO World Heritage List was a long process. So Israel might have been aware of it, yes. But once this became public, Palestine pushed really hard to move forward with this nomination process to the UNESCO World Heritage
Hmm.
List. But the process has been going on for a long time, and maybe Israel was aware of this process that was happening. So this was a really big event
Hmm.
in the life of Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza and everywhere. Everywhere in the world, people were wearing their grandmother's Palestinian dresses and saying, hey, this is my grandmother's dress, and we are Palestinians, and this is our heritage, and we need to protect it. So
Hmm.
that was a really big event. And I want to add something, Andrea, that's very important. This is not the only time, and I think this is why Palestinians reacted so quickly. This is not the only time that
Yes.
Israel have appropriated dresses. And I wanted to show you a couple of old examples and even more recent
Hmm.
examples. And this one is a big one. This is an El Al is an Israeli airline,
Hmm.
and in 1980, the Jerusalem Post have published the dress of some of the stewardesses in Al Airline, and they were wearing the traditional Palestinian dress. So that also caused a problem because this is definitely not Israeli dress, it's a Palestinian, and we have the history and the documentation to kind of
Hmm.
prove it and talk about it that way. So this was a really big problem for Palestinian. I'm going to show you another example even earlier. Um, in There was a folklore festival in the United States, and an Israeli girl, here seen in this image, went to that festival in the U.S. Wearing a Palestinian headdress and a Palestinian thobe, representing the state of Israel or representing Israel,
Hmm.
and that was published. This image was published in an American newspaper in 1978. So this is also another example of cultural appropriation, and that caused also a reaction from the Palestinians. So it's not a short history. The beauty pageant is not just one event; it's a multitude of events. Look at this one, 2016, a Tel Aviv Fashion Week. They were taking the kufiya, and this lady, I think, has a store of only kufiya dresses. So taking the kufiya that has so much political and cultural and social symbolism for Palestinians and using it on modern fashion. So that was something that was again in the mind and the history, recent history and memory of Palestinians of cultural appropriation of their heritage and their Palestinian dress and their kufiya. So the UNESCO thing is not just a reaction to this. It's been going on for a long time. And I think it was time to make sure that we protect our Palestinian tradition, especially the art of embroidery in this example.
We have we have seen some examples too
Mhm.
in some brands that were using
Yes.
the coffee.
Yes, yes. International brands, U.S. brands, absolutely. They were using it. Since my talk with you today is not about that, I didn't want to add so much information, but you're absolutely right. I can't remember, was it Mike Jacobs? I can't remember the designer, but there were a couple of designers that have actually, especially the kufiya, have used it and they were selling it for an amazing and a crazy amount of money, and benefiting from such an important symbol for Palestinians. You're absolutely right.
But there have been many efforts to make this known to in
Yes.
the media, in social network, and it's been very strong. I think people are now more connected, so
Yes.
they're all showing their heritage and what they come from, and that it was from the grandmother, great great grandmother, and
Yes.
it's something that comes from way back. It's indigenous to the Palestinian
And
people.
I'm going to show you right now exactly that point, that this is an indigenous art. I call it organic. It came naturally to women living there. I'm going to show you some examples. It's really wonderful and powerful examples that we're going to discuss right now. And this is also an answer to a lot of people that says, well, embroidery is everywhere in the world. And I absolutely agree with that. And I encourage every culture that has embroidery to protect it and promote it and share it with the rest of the world and celebrate it. But I wanted to show you that Palestinian embroidery has depth of history. It has depth of meaning, and these meanings
Sorry to
come from the
interrupt.
people.
I would like to know from your background, anthropological background, the cross stitch.
Yes.
How did it started?
Do you mind if I come back to the cross stitch? Because I'm going to talk a little bit
No
about
problem.
it.
Great.
Thank you so much. It's actually one of the most popular stitches in the area. And by the way, it exists in many other cultures as well. So I just want you to know that it's not a very unique stitch, but
No.
it's been there with many other cultures as well.
I was thinking that it could have started in Jericho.
Oh, a certain design have started in Jericho.
Uh-huh.
Absolutely. So let me show you some images that really pull us back to Jericho. Jericho is a fascinating place. So here is Jericho, and some of the things that are resembling things that are found in Jericho, especially the dresses. So these are images from Egypt about Canaanites king coming from historical Palestine and going to visit pharaonic Egypt and dressing up there in their traditional dresses. And a lot of these dresses are embroidered, especially the elongated embroidery. And that's the hallmark of Jericho's dress, as I'm going to show you in a moment. So the Jericho dress with these elongated embroidered panels is very unique for Jericho. And even the headdresses. This is a Bethlehem headdress. And if you guys can see here with these, I don't know if you can see the cursor. It is in Greater Syria. These dresses were present there for gods and for the goddesses. So these headdresses existed in the region for a very long time, and these dresses we call it Greater Syria, and these dresses, specifically those elongated embroidery, I wanted to show you those, have roots in Canaanite history that existed in the region of Palestine for a long time. If you can notice these elongated embroidery. This is from an ivory panel found in Megiddo in Palestine, dating to the 13th century BC. These Canaanite dresses existed on these ivory plaques, and this inscription that was also found in Egypt, talking about a Canaanite king coming from that area and coming to visit the land of Egypt. So these gowns and their designs and even the headdresses have existed in the region for an extremely long period of time. So this talks about kind of the historical depth of the
Mhm.
headdresses and the designs in that region for a long time.
Yes, we see. Well, we have Cleopatra in Palmyra and
Yes.
moving on the area, and it's a strategic area. Many got the richness of the zone, and
Yes.
they learned from what it was there, and they took it over to different places.
Correct. And I want to you already introduced me as an archaeologist, which I am. I do want you to know that the area of historical Palestine, this whole area, has been the crossroads of civilization, and even in prehistoric times. So we even have evidence from hundreds of thousands of years existing in Palestine. And we can, what's unique about the historical Palestine is the continuity of occupation from prehistoric times, from a million years up to the present. Imagine continuity of multiple cultures and multiple peoples, not only moving through it, but coming and staying there and building this beautiful and unique cultures, and other cultures, as you said, visiting that
Mhm.
area, meeting the people living in that area, and exchanging knowledge and exchanging ways of
Mhm.
doing things. So the depth of history is important there, and that knowledge has been taken from that region and spreading around the area, and vice versa. So this area of historic Palestine have always been rich in history, from prehistoric times up to the present day. So
Mhm.
it's really beautiful, and the skills learned from there has also gone to other places as
Mhm.
well. So I love this. I just wanted to share with you that the majority of Palestinian dresses have been made from linen and silk. And yes, they've imported some of it from other places, but guess what? They also planted seeds to make
Yeah.
the linen, and they grew they grew the cocoons
Mhm.
to produce silk as
Silk.
well, locally in Palestine. And
Mhm.
if you notice on the bottom of the slide, there were many textile centers throughout history in those different areas where locally produced linen and silk, and later imported silk, because silk is so expensive to produce.
Mhm.
You need a large quantity to produce so little. So the locally produced silks and the important later on imported silk were created. The textile was created in these important textile centers in Palestine. And also these amazing, vibrant colors that we're going to see right now were also produced locally.
Yes.
By
In the indigo blue, it's
Yes,
beautiful.
absolutely. And this skill and knowledge of the colors and how to produce
Mhm.
them is local knowledge and local products. Walnuts, the skins of
Mhm.
walnuts, you can see here the
Yes.
seed of walnut, absolutely delicious. But the skin of the walnut is produces this amazing black color, very rich black
Yes.
color. Like you said, the indigo blue was made from this gorgeous plant here, in Jericho. That's where they planted it, and they used it to produce this beautiful color. That, by the way, they used to dye the threads, but also dye the linens
Mhm.
that were just absolutely magnificent. And I have to tell you, what amazes me is the threads that were done the traditional way,
Mhm.
this way that I'm describing to you, has preserved the color. The vibrance of the colors have preserved for a very, very long time. So that's absolutely kind of magnificent skill. I'll talk a little bit more about the Palestinian Heritage Center in Bethlehem. We have pieces of cloth that are 100 or 150 years old, and they're absolutely fragile and beautiful, and still preserved very, very well. So we have some samples not only at the center, but there are a few museums that have been able to obtain some samples of extremely old, beautiful textiles, a few hundred years old, that are absolutely beautifully preserved. So, and you mentioned the stitches. Palestine is known for multiple stitches. I wasn't going to talk about stitching today, but I wanted to tell you that the cross stitch is so prominent, and the cross stitch, like you see on the dress up. Right. The stitches, especially the cross stitch, has
Mhm.
been present in all of historic Palestine. That means every single town and village have embroidered using the cross stitch. So that was the most prominent stitch. There are multiple other ones, but that was the most prominent stitch that is present everywhere. in Palestine. I wanted to bring your attention to one unique stitch, and I know people from Chile Palestinians from Chile come from the region of Bethlehem, yes? And in Bethlehem region, the ladies are very well known to do a unique stitch called the couching stitch, where they actually don't stitch the actual fabric. They put the thread on the fabric and they attach it with the very small stitching to the fabric itself. And it makes it like protruding, it becomes 3D like. And that is very unique to the ladies of Bethlehem. They were the experts of doing this couching stitch. And women from Jerusalem who were very wealthy and loved the stitch would commission women from Bethlehem to embroider their dresses with the couching stitch. So this stitch was very unique to the Bethlehem area.
And they generally did the couching with silk threads, or other things that they added?
Absolutely. Thank you for asking. I'm actually going to show you an image later on of that, but it is definitely silk thread. But I want you to know that silk thread was also used in other region. But what's unique to Bethlehem area is the metallic threads that were covered with gold and silver. And
Uh-huh.
that's why these dresses were magnificent. Not only were they 3D and protruding out, but they were glittering with gold and silver colors,
And
which
very
made,
heavy, I guess.
yes, very heavy and very just beautiful and rich looking and very densely embroidered as well.
So in Jerusalem, they had a specific stitch or a specific design?
In Jerusalem specifically, they focused on the embroidery from Bethlehem. So the design was mainly the design that was present in Bethlehem. So that's mainly the design that they've used. They used cross stitch as well, but Jerusalem and Bethlehem, women from those area wore dresses with the couching stitch.
Okay. Muchísimas gracias. Estamos terminando nuestra primera parte. Es una entrevista muy, muy entretenida. Estamos aprendiendo muchísimo. Y como no nos queremos perder nada, estamos dividiéndola para que podamos verla en todo el detalle. Muchísimas gracias.
يا رايح صوبة وبس سلي مع الشام وأجلى إلا كلمة بتشرق شمس بتذكر